of blackened earth, cold concrete and rusted steel, the measure of our worth. The grit is in the marrow, the dawn is in the bone. We're building up a kingdom on a foundation we have known. Oh, we are the backbone of America, called from the deep. The promises we made are the ones that we keep. Hard-line endurance under the sun, a heartbeat that finishes what it's begun. We are the backbone of America, steel and gray. Stand tall. Stand tall.
This segment is brought to you by the law offices of R.P. Baraska. RPB law offices have been bringing corporate-level legal expertise to the independent inventor community for more than 20 years. For all your inventing legal needs, trust rpblawoffices.com.
And thank you so much for being with us for this episode of Made in America. We see it, we make it right here in the USA. This segment is brought to you by Product Quick Start. Noah McDee is the CEO of Product Quick Start. So if you know someone who needs a prototype, wants manufacturing, Product Quick Start is who you contact. So my guest for this episode of Made in America is Jim Wilson. And this is a different, kind of a different side of it. In the past, we've always had the guest on that was the CEO of the manufacturing plant, the idea giver or whatever. But, I thought it would be really fun to talk to someone who worked for the factory that was right here, feet on the ground. So, Jim, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm, I don't know what to say. Started, got married when I was young, looking for a job to do. We moved back to Pennsylvania from the St. Louis area to be closer to family. And my sister knew of a guy that was looking for someone to take over maintenance and production procedures for his knitting mill. So I got in contact with him, and we started talking and discussing what we would do. And he moved me back from Missouri, outside of, we were living in O'Fallon, to Pennsylvania. And I started doing maintenance and such at the knitting mill, and worked my way up to vice president of operations. So it was a good run. We had a good working relationship with the boss and I think with the people. And I was kind of the intercessory between the big boss, who hired me, and the people on the floor. I seemed to get along very well with both. So sometimes there was I was a counselor to both sides, So, but it worked out well. We made the company made trimmings for the athletic industry, and by trimming I mean if you watch baseball and you see the stripes that go around the collar and down the center of the shirt. It's a little 3-stripe pattern, and it's about a 1/2 inch wide, and that's what we made. And all the way up to a very large stripe for the hockey referees that needed to be identified very clearly. And so that was a very large piece of trimming that went on the sleeve of their shirt. So, anything from very small to about 4.5 inches. That's what we did. And we did, if you know what an awards jacket is, you'll see a lot of football players and people in sports in high school will have a very decorative jacket, and it'll have a waistband on it and cuffs and a collar, a big collar. And we would make the knitted trimmings for that. And it was a good job. I mean, we had a good time. I had 3 kids and supported everybody, got all the kids married and off to college. And paid for all that, and it was very good. It was very very rewarding job for me.
Well, a couple of things that you said, and that one, you were kind of the translator. You did basically therapy. We forget, when we have on the CEOs and the founders of these different factories, is that in order for it to be successful, there was a whole bunch of people down the line that are doing the work.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
from the basic guy standing on the dock loading boxes to the guy all the way up the ladder that is making sure that everyone understands what's expected, right?
Yeah, there's no one job more important than the other, because it all, like you just said, it hinges on, from the guy that's loading the truck. If you screw that up, then you can't, your customer won't get their goods. So, and that aggravates them, and then you have to get everything back. So everything's important. There are some jobs that are harder, more in depth, more creative. You have to be a little bit more creative to get the job done. You have to understand the functionality of the machinery to fix it. We had some machines in our plant that were made in 1922, and we bought the machine basically for parts, and we looked at it and said, hey, we can get this thing running. So we fixed it and got other parts from other machines and jury rigged this and that, and made it work. And I don't know if it's still working today, but that's how we did things. You had to make things work in order to make the product that you needed to ship out for the customer.
The good old American way. You make
well,
it
that's
right.
That's exactly what it was. It was very important to the customer to get their goods, and they needed it done right, and they needed it done on time. And if we quoted we were 6 weeks out, 8 weeks out, that's what they were planning on. And if you were 10 weeks out, then they got upset. So you had to put out, and you had to produce and be a man of your word, and follow through with what you told the customer, because that's what they base their production on.
Well,
and that's what they told their customer.
Right, absolutely. And these parts that you made, I don't think many people realize that a huge factory can make a very simple thing and make a whole bunch of them and ship them all over the world.
Oh yeah, we did. We shipped worldwide, mostly in the United States, and mostly to jobbers in a lot of it in our area. But we did have to go overseas to acquire a different product, because we just couldn't make it as cheap as as China could make it, or someone else could make it. So we did go overseas. We had to buy things from overseas, and that's typical of a lot of places, that you just can't either find it here, or your competitors have it, and we have to be competitive. So we had to buy that fabric also. So it was that's just one of the rules of the game. You have to participate. So if you just say to the customer, well, we don't have it and we're not going to get it, well, then they'll go to the other guy.
Oh yeah.
So you have to keep everybody happy, and it's not an easy task sometimes.
That's for sure.
But it can be fun.
I was going to say, back in the day, all right, manufacturing was pretty much taken for granted in this country. And then as things started to shift and manufacturing started to go overseas, this is one of the companies that is still manufacturing today. But how did you see things change over the decades?
A lot of the big changes, whereas in the production end of it, was the computer. In the old days, and I'm talking in pre 1960, 1970, a lot of the machines were just mechanically driven. They were mechanically all the subtasks of the machine were done by rods and cams and chains and things like that, and different settings on the machine to make it do what you wanted to do. That were all manual adjustments. Well, with the computer, you could punch in some numbers, And what we did was we made designs too on some of our trimmings. So um, we could design it on the computer, uh, and see what it looked like, and then put it on a floppy disk and take it down to the machine, which was downstairs, and plug it in and do some adjustments, and you got something running in an hour or two instead of days. And that I think is the biggest, and with a lot of industry, that is the biggest change, is the fact that the computer can take over a lot of work that doesn't that took so long to do before. The computer does it in seconds instead of hours. So I think that's for us, that was our big change. And so yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I remember, back in the day and, at the start of the computers, and it did make it better. But, the factories impacted the community. So after we take a break, because we even have to go pay some bills, we're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit more about how your factory impacted the local community. So stick with us, everybody. We're enjoying this different perspective of Made in America.
This segment is brought to you by SearchQuest Patent Search. SearchQuest provides for a comprehensive patent search that searches the entire world and not just the U.S. Patent Office. Make sure that before you spend those big bucks having a patent written, you've done your due diligence by getting a comprehensive patent search. Use SearchQuestPatents.com for all your patent search needs. They scour the world for you.
And thank you so much for being with us for this segment of Made in America, because we see it, we make it right here in the good old USA. And my guest for this episode of Made in America is Jim Wilson. He's talking to us about Made in America from a different perspective, the worker's perspective. And, Jim, we've talked in the past about, kind of that circle of life. You've got a factory, you've got people that work in the factory, and then it circles around where it's, the local gas station, the local, bowling alley, the local, diners or whatever. But when people are working for the factory, and living in a community, the entire community can thrive. So, what did you see?
Well, we had a factory that was in the suburbs, and near us were of course houses and streets lined with houses and different housing developments. So we would recruit a lot of times from the neighbors, from the neighboring communities. And what was nice about that was we would recruit a lot of women, basically from they were done raising the children. The kids were out of school or in high school, and they had some time on their hands where they could go out and do something. And we bring them extra money. So you add money into the mix, that makes people spend more money, and that's always good for the community. And the local stores, the local hobby shops, things like that, where all of a sudden these people had some ready cash that they could go out and buy different things. So I think that was a big change, because the moms, mostly the moms in the neighborhood and retired guys could basically almost walk to work, and they didn't have to go buy a car to get to work. So there's an expense they didn't have to do. So hiring from the local community was a big plus, I think, for the community, because it added income for a lot of different families. So that was pretty good. I mean, and the people were nice. They were a little older than me, and they didn't like taking direction from somebody younger sometimes, but we got along and we got the jobs done. So
during your time working there, what was the biggest surprise?
For me, the biggest surprise, when you have a job, or they call it a job, and work, the 4-letter word work, you look at it as though, well, it's a drudgery. I have to go to work to make them. But for me, I look forward to work every day. I would look forward to solving the problems that came up in production in factory work. Things would catch fire. Things would not work anymore. Things would the electricity would blow out, or different. You never knew what you were going to walk into every single day, and while it was a challenge. And fortunately, I had people I could count on to come and help fix things, and or fix it myself. A lot of times it was on me to find out how to fix something because nobody else wanted to touch it. So a lot of people are afraid of electronics. They're afraid of electricity, and with good reason.
Oh, yeah.
So I was not afraid to dig in and see if I could fix it instead of calling somebody, because that's extra money out of the profits of the company. So yeah, that was the biggest surprise, I think, was the fact that I enjoyed my job so much. I really enjoyed, and I was there 35 years, and we made a lot of good changes in the company. A lot of good progress was made. We brought a lot of different production abilities into the company, and that was good. I mean, it was very positive for me. So that was my biggest surprise, was how much I love my job.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Oh, that's wonderful. And so, when we look at then, a factory like that is part of the community. All right. A lot of times I will see different factories, and they really go out and they start participating in the community. They don't just go home. They'll do different programs. What were some of the different things that the factory did to have outreach more than just offering jobs?
That was about it for our factory. It was a matter of employing the young people. A lot of times they were fresh out of high school or still in high school, and they would come in and from like 3 o'clock till 4:15, 5 o'clock, they do trash or something, and you get a chance to talk to the kids. You get a chance to communicate with them and let them know that there's a right and a wrong way to approach a job. You got to give it your all, whether you're doing the trash or you're designing a program. It's all about giving all that you can, and even extra. So I think that was a nice impact, I think, on the community, because you had a chance to interact with kids, and at a very young age, to give them a step up sometimes as to how to act on a job, to do what you need to do.
Absolutely. I mean, you get some of these kids, and all they need, 2 or 3 hours a day to go out and do something after school, keeps them out of trouble.
Yeah,
Puts some bucks in their pockets. At that point, a lot of times they're starting to drive, and they got to pay for their own gas.
And girlfriends, don't forget that.
So it's good for them, and they didn't have to go very far.
No, that's right down the street. So it was very convenient for them. And I do think it gave them a lot of self-esteem. They're earning their own way, and there's a lot to be said for a person that has a job, and he's finding his own way, or her own way, and financing themselves, and they're not depending on any handouts from anybody, even parents. They think, no, Dad, I don't need your money. They might have liked to have it, but wouldn't have been nice to say, nah, I'm good. I got some money here. So.
Well, and there's not that many options for kids to go and work a couple of hours. It's either, they want you there all day long, or not at all. Well, for kids in high school, they need a little. They need,
Yeah.
Just, a few hours, like you said,
Yeah, a little bit of a push, a little bit of a step up. And I think that was very good. And not only for the kids, but for their moms too. They could work, and they had to go home at 3 o'clock instead of working the full day. Well, okay, we can deal with that, because their kids might have been coming home from school, and they had to be home at a certain hour.
Yep,
So we worked with that. It was very good.
That's wonderful. So we're going to go and take a break and pay some bills. A big thank you to King Productions for making all of this happen, and for my dear friend Matt, who keeps us all on track. We'll be right back with another segment of Made in America.
If you're an inventor or you know an inventor out there who would just like to be able to have a conversation with other inventors, join the Inventors Roundtable. It's free. The meetings are virtual, so you can be anywhere in America and talk to another inventor. And for a lot of folks out there, understanding the process, being able to ask questions, getting good service provider information is critical to the inventing process. So, got questions? Want to join? It's free, inventorsroundtable.org.
And thank you so much for being with us for this segment of Made in America. We need it, we want it, we make it right here in the good old US of A. And my guest for this episode of Made in America is Jim Wilson. And he was a long-time worker in the factory, kind of in the middle there, from not the owner and the founder and not, doing the basics, but worked his way up from the starting at the basics to being then a part of management and seeing the relationship between all the workers and the founders and making sure things ran smoothly. So Jim, I had to kind of cut you off there, but you were talking about the community and why it was so important. Share with us.
Well, again, when the community, the people that you hire and you can pay them, and they go home with a decent sized paycheck, they get to go out and buy the things that maybe they couldn't have bought a year before when they weren't working. Now, whether they work for us or someone else, but working for us so close to home, that meant that they didn't have to, again, buy a car or buy transportation to get to work to earn that money. And so they get that money and they could go out and buy a new TV, or they could go out and buy new clothes, or maybe help their kid through college. It was all very, what the company did directly for the community. We didn't have fairs and all that kind of stuff, but we did allow people to maybe rise above where they were before. Not real far, they couldn't go out and buy a mansion, but they could go out and enjoy life a little bit more. Maybe go out to dinner sometimes and enjoy things a little bit more since they had a few extra bucks to spend. So that's what I think. That's what our community impact, and that's true with any business, I guess. It's gonna give people that extra spending money that they might not have had before.
And that's really important, because as those companies then in different small communities, and I think it was in a suburb for you, but there are a lot of the factories that were in small communities, and when those factories left, when they got bought out or they had to close down because there wasn't enough business, people were going overseas and getting products there. There's a competition there that, yes, you have to deal with, but a lot of those companies and factories were closed down, and it impacts everybody in the community. It's not like just an empty building now, but everybody in that community suffers, and it doesn't matter whether it's a small town or a suburb.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. And like you're saying, if a company goes out of business, and especially the really large places, and they don't usually tell their employees, listen, in 3 months we're going to be out of business. They need to keep their employees on hand to still make their product and meet their costs until the time comes when it comes to close the doors. And so they don't tell their employees. A lot of companies aren't upfront about that, because the employees will say, well, then I better start looking for a job, and it'll leave that company hanging even in worse shape. So, yeah, it's a big void. But we hung in there. Matter of fact, the company I worked for bought a couple of other buildings in the same area to continue what we went from. We started doing sublimation, and that's printing. What you would do is put a pattern on paper, and the paper is loaded with the inks, and the fabric would come this way on a big giant drum, 400-degree drum that would roll, and the pattern would then be sublimated or printed onto the fabric, and it would come off. The ink almost instantly dry. It would actually go into into the fibers of the fabric. It wasn't just on top. And you've seen a lot of T-shirts with a print on them it looks like it's painted on with a roller. And basically, sometimes that it is exactly how they do it. But this is actually infused into the fabric itself, and it makes it very comfortable. And we started. They started when I was still there, I was with them for a few years, and then when I left, that actually grew into a huge portion of the company, and they actually bought whole buildings now in the town to continue that further and do more. So that's it's moving with the times. You really have to move with the times.
You do, absolutely. And that's one of the things I was just going to say is, the factories that have kind of evolved, with technology and the times, have done better and stayed more vibrant than the ones that did not.
Oh yeah, you have to, and that was the forethought of the president, of the owner's son, who came in and saw this product, and he said to his dad, he says, "Look, we got to get into this. This is going to be huge," and it has been huge. They hired a bank of artists. They've hired I think 10 to 15 people to run this whole area in a separate building. So it's a whole entity separate from the trimmings end, and it's they make the whole uniform. I mean, they brought in laser cutters to cut the fabric out in the shape of, you figure, a basketball uniform, and they would cut it out. So we would send that off to the jobber, and all they got to do is sew it together. That had the guy's name on it, had his number, it was the right size. It was really, really interesting how that was all done. So,
well, it was interesting. I had a chance to visit with the CEO and talk to him, and he goes, our customers are not the consumer. Our customers are the big companies that want this stuff printed on them, the athletic, industry, different groups that want certain things. They want it done a certain way, but so, it's not the consumer that goes out and buys the product. It is the big companies that want things to look a certain way, and they want their, print on it. They want their art on it. They want their colors on it. And so these guys just, they really go out there and make a very cool product in a lot of varieties for their clients.
And it's very much more comfortable also for the athlete. I mean, instead of having a big bulky stripe down their shirt or a big number hanging on their back, and they're, figure a basketball player is running how many thousands of times, thousands of steps up and down that court, and they're sweating, and so the lighter the fabric is that they're wearing for the uniform, that better it is for them. They could run cooler. So it was really a big advent, I think, in the industry. Keep the players more comfortable, and they perform better. So that was pretty neat.
That's got to be neat to see those, those cool logos, and it's like, I made that.
Yeah. Well, it is neat. And when you watch a game on TV and you see, hey, that's what we do in our we did that one. See that stripe on that shirt? We make that. So it's pretty neat to see it. And sometimes it's worldwide. So we had Nike come to us. They had a problem. They wanted a certain pattern on their jack card, and they couldn't figure it out. And the boss said, "What do you think?" I said, "Give me a shot." So I figured it out and made a friend with Nike. So it was very, very good. I like the challenge. I like having a challenge and to figure stuff out. So,
well, you're very good at that. I know you are a very good problem solver, and knowing that you were working 35 years for the company Feet on the Ground, and they still are here doing these things, and you've been able to participate, has got to be really satisfying.
It is, and people would say to me, "Oh, the company's going to really miss you. They're going to shut down." I said, "No, they won't. They were doing fine before I got there, and they'll do great after I leave." It's. I was looking for a job when I found that one, and they were looking for someone when I found that job. So whether it was me or someone else, they replaced me with another guy that was even better. He had more experience in the building maintenance department than I did. But yeah, it was all very good. I mean, there were disappointments. Sure, I've had. I think one of my major disappointments in.
Well, we're going to get you to hold that until we come back. We're going to
Okay.
take a break, and we'll be right back, and we'll hear some of that disappointment from Jim Wilson, because we've all had them. So stick with us, everybody. We will be right back for another segment of Made in America.
True Up, the easiest way to hang your pictures. We all know how stressful picture hanging can get. True Up comes with everything you need to level and hang pictures with no damage and no mess. Just peel, apply the adhesive to the back of the True Up mount and press firmly. Remove the remaining adhesive. Use the level and press and hold for 3 to 5 seconds to attach the True Up mount to your wall with a strong hold. The True Up frame adapter is compatible with most frames on the market. Apply the adhesive strip to the adapter, stick, and your frame hangs easily on the wall mount. This lets you adjust your picture side to side for perfect placement every time. The possibilities are limitless, and it's easy on your walls. Picture hanging can be truly a one-person job. True Up, the future of hanging is here.
Thank you so much for being with us for the final segment of Made in America. We need it, we make it right here in the good old USA. It's kind of like inventing 2.0, all right, where we're taking it to the next level. And this segment is brought to you by Bond Products. It is the DIY carpet binding. There is only one Instabind. You can find it on bondproducts.com. And my guest for this segment is Jim Wilson. And Jim, with every wonderful story, there's got to be a couple of disappointments. So share with us what were the
I think some of the major disappointments. I like I said, I love my job and I really enjoyed going to work every day. And I did the hiring and the firing, and the firing end is never pleasant. I don't care how much you ready yourself to do that. A lot of people, well, I'll just fire the guy, get rid of. Well, you're affecting someone's life when you do that, and that's something that I realized. I've never been fired from a job, but it was one of those things that I didn't like doing, and I would try to guide them along and everything. And one of the things I did want to say is a lot of times the people that show up for the job are not the same person that you interviewed a few days before that. You check their credentials, you check their past history, and employers can't tell a whole lot about a past employee. So you're basically treading on very thin ice when you hire somebody because you don't really know them. So and that was before. This was before we had the advent of the Facebook and the electronic stuff. So I would call the past employer, ask them a few questions, and I knew that they couldn't answer. They couldn't say a whole lot. So I had one guy come in, and he worked for the morning. I called him, and he came in, and he was gone. So he called about 11 o'clock in the morning, and I said, well, where are you at? He goes, well, I went home. I said, well, wait, why'd you go home? He goes, well, I want more money. I said, I'll tell you what, you stay home. You'll get more money. You just stay home. It's like,
see how that works for you.
Yeah, see how that works out for you. So it was one of those things that a lot of times the person that you interviewed is not the one that shows up for the job. A lot of times they were. It was good. It worked out fine, and we had a lot of employees there that had been there 20, 30, 40 years. So it was a good place to work, and like I said, I always enjoyed going into work. It wasn't drudgery. I think I would hate that if I had to work and hated going to work just to make money.
Yeah, that would be tough. And I would imagine that for every one that was a surprise disappointment, there was probably a half a dozen that were a surprise good. And the fact that they worked harder, they were more, wiser on the spot, more intelligent to solve problems. They would help somebody else. I would imagine that there was a lot of that went on too.
There was, and what I think a lot of employers lack or don't think enough about is getting the input from the person on the floor. getting the input from the person doing the job. A lot of times I would go on, we were making major changes, and I would go ask the group. I said, well, how can we do this better for you? Well, we could do this, we could do that, we could have the power. This is before the battery operated, a lot of battery operated stuff. So the power cords from the top, so we wouldn't cut. A lot of times they would cut the power cord going to we had to cut these long strips. So sometimes they would cut the cord. So they've said, bring it from the top. And it was a great idea. And we did little things like that to make their job easier and to make them produce more, which is the end game. So like my boss used to tell me, Jim, he says, the only reason I'm here is to make money. So, but he really did. He really cared about the employees. He really cared about not their personal life, but to make sure that if there was something he could do to help them financially or whatever, he was always there for them. So, and that's the kind of guy I worked for. He was very, very sympathetic to the problems of his workers. So, and me included. I mean, he would talk to me about paying the mortgage off early and 401k and that kind of thing. So, it was very good. So yeah, we still keep in touch. I've been gone 11, 12 years, and he still says to me, next time you come up, let me know. We'll go out to dinner. So I think it's very important that when someone quits a job and decides to move on, that they don't create such a wave that they burn their bridges. And you don't ever want to burn a bridge, because you never know when you want to go back across that bridge, like that bridge behind you, So.
And I know you're still in touch with him. You made the introduction so that I could call him and visit with him a little bit.
Yeah.
And, and like I said, we hear from, owners and CEOs on a regular basis. But the interesting part of this show was hearing from the worker's point of view.
Right.
And if you want a healthy manufacturing environment, that health starts with your employees. I mean, you've got to have a good job and a good plan, but if the people aren't happy and they're not treated well, you end up with a really bad experience for everyone, including
having a disgruntled employee. You never know what they can do to really hurt your business. And I don't think, we've had issues. I've had to, like I said, I've had to fire people because they didn't want to toe the line. But having a happy employee, when you go downstairs and you ask them to do something and they say, yeah, okay, not a problem, we'll get it done. That's a whole lot better than, I don't have time to do that. I've got this, that, and the other thing to do. And so having an employee ready and willing to do whatever task that they're presented with made my job a lot easier. So,
yeah, it sure does. So, Jim, thank you so much for being with us today. We are very grateful to hear that side of the story. Everyone have a wonderful week, and we will be right back here with you next weekend. Bye, everyone.
Splitting open on a line of blackened earth, cold concrete and rusted steel, the measure of our worth. The grit is in the marrow, the dawn is in the bone. We're building up a kingdom on a foundation we have known. Oh, we are the backbone of America, called from the deep. The promises we made are the ones that we keep. Hard-long endurance under the sun, a heartbeat that finishes what it's begun.